Chasin the Racin, powered by Colchester Kawasaki. Part of the Global Moto Group, we supply new Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, Vespa, Royal Enfield, Kawasaki, Sim, Mutt and Benelli motorcycles.
3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasin the Racin.
Hello everyone, this is part 2 of the John Hopkins episode, so naturally that means you have to listen to part 1 to make any sense out of this part of it. And yeah, sit down, enjoy, and let us know what you think.
I'll tell you what, totally jumping off the timeline, and it's quite, how gutted are you that Suzuki have essentially folded, haven't they, from like motorsport support? You know, like you've been such a Suzuki fan.
Devastated, absolutely fucking devastated, because like they finally had a bike that literally fucking when they pulled out of
Vinales and
when they pulled out of MotoGP, like I would say that was probably the best all-around MotoGP bike to be on was the Suzuki. The year they fucking pulled out, because they had the horsepower, they finally had the speed, they've had the chassis for fucking lots of years, like all around package, that was the best fucking MotoGP bike on the grid at the time. And you know, it was devastating to see him pull out, like, but I mean, they unfortunately, Suzuki just fucking went all wrong with their business model. You know, whereas, you know, it's all the manufacturers and everyone, they're putting that fucking crazy, insane money into MotoGP to also develop and, you know, put the technology and everything eventually into their sport bikes and obviously sell the sport bikes to then cover the money that they're putting into the Grand Prix, whereas Suzuki fucking put all of that money, all of that fucking development, everything, only all of it into the MotoGP, but did absolutely fuck all and nothing to their sport bikes.
Their production bike was like the most basic thing out there, isn't it?
Was over like 15 years, 15 years old, never doing development on that, anything to
keep
get
it in
the
system,
consumer and people to buy it, and
like a lot of it, like it's not just motorcycles have pulled out off. It's obviously motocross and
but they're
like
doing
car racing, everything. Suzuki have gone. We're off. They're still manufacturing.
They're still doing like cars and stuff like that. But I
still involved in world endurance, aren't they? There's a little bit of support with a certain team, but it's from motorcycles. They have basically pulled the plug from motorcycles in general. Like,
and the biggest problem with anything really in life is sometimes when you get something taken away, very, very rarely does it come back. And I think that's the nature of it. Everyone goes, shit, that's kind of it. But hopefully, sitting here with no evidence at all, hopefully that somehow gets spun around, because arguably there's actually not many manufacturers in motorsport in any field, you know, big cars and bikes, you know, there's actually, you know, it's all at war each other, but there's actually not that many. It's not like there's hundreds. It's only a handful, so hopefully that gets turned on. But anyway, let's go back to it. So leaving a big darky MotoGP, getting bollocked.
Because the Kawasaki move wasn't that was a difficult one, wasn't it?
No, it was difficult, but I mean, that's something, like I said, I was actually really happy about, like, explaining that in my book, but like, it was...
Plug number 2 there.
But
that's when you read it, just that whole journey makes a little bit more sense.
So I grew up in, like, the baseline behind it is, like, you know, the Suzuki was just, I mean, fucking bad. Like, it was, as much as I loved the company and like everything, like that was like unbelievably bad. It was like, for us to finish in the top 15 was like we would have won the race. Like, the team would be ecstatic. It was that bad at the time in the early years, and like we stuck with it. You know, we continued to build, and in America, like Nicky Hayden was always looked at in America, and then obviously, you know, into the world championship race. As much as I respect him and like, you know, now and always kind of, you know, have, he was my main rival, and like, but he was always America's golden boy. He was always the, you know, blonde, blue eye, like, you know, good looking, America's very well behaved, you know, like good American.
Honda's dream.
Yeah, like Honda's like
Honda.
absolute dream.
Yeah.
And he was one of the ones, actually, funny enough, like when I made the switch to, he was interviewed quite heavily at the time, like, oh, like, don't you feel like, and he was like, oh, like, I don't have any intention of like going world championship racing for at least another 5-6+ years. And like, oh, I haven't even looked at that. I only want to race here in America. And, you know, I think he's going to struggle.
I was going to say, did he rubbish you a little bit?
Not a little bit, but not like, he was always good like that. Like he was always been, he did it politely and politically, like he basically said, like it was a mistake that I was leaving and going over, and then and that like I was going to struggle and I was going to have a hard time and this and that, and I wasn't ready and this that, and basically that was his like way of saying I wasn't ready and all that. And then obviously I proved everyone wrong, went out, did quite well and had a successful year. And then fucking boom, the next year he's fucking signed a deal with Repsol Honda, and like, which was at the time like
top in, as like, a package, it was that the best package on it.
Like the I mean, it's literally like going up against a fucking, you know, a full blown fucking factory Ducati World Superbike against a fucking production bike, like right off the showroom stock. Like it was, they were like the
top of the triangle,
at the time. And so, you know, that always kind of gave me a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. And then, you know, as we raced throughout, you know, I stuck with him. We made Suzuki quite competitive. Anyways, Nicky went, and then finally he struggled for the first few years, but then, you know, he was like, it was right on the point where like, and then anything also in America, like whenever me and Nicky, we were always, because of the age difference, we're always in a different class. So we were quite staggered, except for when we raced 600 Supersport. But I always, when we were on the same bikes, I always would finish ahead of him and always beat him. Like my whole career prior to that in Grand Prix, when we were on the same level bikes and stuff like that. So I knew I could beat him. I knew I could, you know, be a better rider in my head and all that. And then obviously, you know, fast forward to Grand Prix and Suzuki and all that stuff. It took him a few years to finally get up to speed. And it was right at the point where like Honda were like you either got to perform, because he went like 2 or 3 years, I think, without even being on the podium. And finally, you know, he did, and he you know, but he worked his ass off. Like Nicky fucking put the work in. I mean, like, you know, we'd wake up, you know, we'd do the Monday tests. I'd be fucking still asleep, half pissed, like fucking hungover, and I'd hear and I'd hear the V5, and I'd be like, oh shit, Nicky's on track, I gotta get up.
And he's probably been and done a 20-mile mountain bike ride to warm up, and
so,
had his porridge
and so I was like, oh fuck, I gotta get going. And but anyways, he won the world championship in 2006, and like the Suzuki was just starting to become competitive, and then and it literally like put an insane fire under me, like the fact that he had won the world championship. So I was like, fuck it, like I can do this. I know I'm a better rider. I know I can beat him. And then Suzuki finally brought like you know, we had been developing it and brought it to, you know, we were starting to get pole positions, and I was starting to get top fives, and they built, you know, a pretty decent bike. And then the 800s came out, and like they brought out a really good 800 to start in 2007. And you look at every single preseason test at the start of 2007, whether it was Malaysia, we went to Barcelona, we went to Jerez, we went to Phillip Island. You know, we used to do all kinds of like preseason testing at the time. I was first at every single fucking test. Qatar. And then 2 weeks before the start of the race, before the first race, we were testing in Qatar, and it was on the third day. I was doing a race run, and like I was fucking doing awesome, like really good, like consistent times, and I mean like to the 10th, like over like a 18 lap run. And like I didn't want to put like a fucking like a dash on the entire run, but I caught up to Silva and Gintoli at the time, and who was on like the Yamaha, and he was like way slower at the time on the Tech 3 Yamaha at the time. Again, they were on Dunlop.
So it was the yellow Dunlop bike, wasn't it? Yeah.
And I caught up to him, and he was basically, it was to start at like the really fast right-handers, like 3 consecutive right-handers, and he was like a little bit outside, and I had so much more speed than him. I was like, fuck, I don't, like, I either had to fucking go for it, try and make the pass, or I had to sit up and fucking ruin my, like, perfect fucking consistent, like, lap time. So I was like, fuck it, I can get him. I knew I can get him. And, like, I went in and I tried to dive up the inside of him. And obviously I didn't make it, didn't have the time. And so he pulled down and didn't even, so there was no way he could see me. And he crossed right over my front tire. So I went over the high side at, 130, 40 mile an hour. Had a crash, and I came down, and like it drove my wrist and hand into the ground. And so I ended up breaking my scaphoid. And broke my scaphoid 2 weeks before the start of the race. So obviously, I instantly got on a plane, flew home, right hand, throttle brake, to go and see my surgeon. And my surgeon just said, like, fuck, it's a scaphoid. So you've got one or two options, because it severed a tendon as well, one of the main tendons. Severed the tendon and broke the scaphoid. And so basically gave me 2 options. He said, look, you're going to either have to sit out like a good, like 4 to maybe 5 months for us to pin the tendon, and then also for the scaphoid, because it's so long, no blood flow gets to that. It's a really bad bone to break.
Have you only got 1 blood vessel to it, or 2?
Yeah, some people very actually minimal, very minimal, and so it just takes a long time to heal because there's just no blood flow.
Because some people actually have 2, and if you have 2, you're incredibly lucky, because if you break 1, you can actually rely on the other. For the speed of the process, but majority of people only have 1. So like you say, when it's gone, it's
such a long process to heal. So he gave me 2 options. You either get it fixed, you're going to sit out half the year, or fucking, just you can try and race with it broken.
Big tablespoon of cement and get on with it.
I just said, fuck it, I'm racing with it broken. There's no way I'm fucking missing this year. Like, I was first at every single preseason test. Like, the whole thing with Nicky, got me all fired up from the year before. Like, I was like, fuck, I worked my fucking ass off, to get the Suzuki to where it was at that time. I'm like, I'm not missing.
Who was your teammate that year?
Vermeulen, who was also like he pushed me to be my fucking absolute best, because he was, a good rider himself. And I was like, fuck, I can't miss this. And so I started, and I ended up getting 4th. Got 4th the first race at Qatar.
And that's with the bust arm.
Yeah. And that was, and I finished right behind. It was me, Rossi, Stoner, and Pedrosa. Us 4 left.
Just another list.
And, 3 now. Yeah, that's where you were, wasn't you? That was the level.
With a bust arm. That's incredible.
With the broken wrist. So and I ended up staying with them the whole race. But just I didn't have enough, and we didn't have enough speed. Anyways, few races in, I finally learned how to race basically with it broke. I compensated with the rest of my body, and it kind of smoothed me out as well, because I was having to ride that much more smooth and having to compensate riding more with my core and body and everything. So it, in a way, kind of helped me almost with my riding style a little bit. But eventually the pain kind of subsided, and my wrist found ways to compensate. And then got on my first podium ever in China, 3 or 4 races in, and then it was a consistent podiums from that point forward. And then we got around the midpoint in the season, but from China, from the start of the year onward, we were struggling with speed. If you go back and watch races like China or Barcelona, Barcelona is a big one, but fucking the Suzuki had no top speed at that time. I mean, it was I would be in the draft and watch fucking bikes just disappear. And I'd be in the draft and watch Stoner, especially on the Ducati, just fucking disappear in front of me. I mean, pull out in upwards of 2 seconds a straightaway.
Jesus.
And then I'd have to make it all back up in the turns, and then
chassis was good.
And the chassis was good, amazing. The chassis was unbelievable, but it would just no matter what we did and fought with the factory to try and bring us speed, it just they weren't able to do it. They weren't bringing us the speed we needed, and. So yeah, it was crazy because it was that year as well, early in the year. I'd always, because Kenny Roberts Sr. at the time had a team, and he was always one of my idols and so forth, and one of my dad's idols, and so always would speak to him and all that, and he was always because of his son winning the championship with Suzuki, he was always quite close with Suzuki and the crew, and he'd always be in and talking with me, and it was crazy because it really stuck with me at the beginning of that year. He came to me earlier in that year, and he was like, man, Suzuki always come in waves. They always come in every 10 years, they bring out a competitive bike, and then they fall off the charts. And then and you look back, and it was actually quite true with Schwantz and Kenny Jr. and everything. And it was quite, and then once they get to that point, they then just taper off and stop with all development and don't progress from that point.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, and I was like, fuck, and that really stuck with me at the point in that year.
Where were you in the wave?
Yeah, I was going to say, what point was that? Would you say they were still on the up, or they would?
No, they were still on the up, I thought, at that point.
Yeah. What we're basically saying to you, you're going to have to persevere here.
Yeah, but they didn't, and that was the thing, because that was quite early in the year. That was only at round 2 or 3 or whatever, when we were still having quite a competitive bike at the time. But the other problem is all the other manufacturers, especially Ducati, and then Yamaha and Honda and all that, they started to make big leaps forward throughout the year.
Yeah.
Whereas we tapered and stayed exactly the same, and so we got mid-season. And I was on track quite a lot with the Kawasaki that year, obviously in free practice, and, I was always beaten in the race, but I'd see it on track all the time, and they had a fucking hell of an engine. It was super fast. It was always towards the top of the sheets and the time charts and the top speed table. And I was like, fuck, man, they got a good engine, and it's just a chassis of shit. But I've gone through all that with Suzuki, and and I've now got as what is to be considered at that time the best chassis in Grand Prix.
Did they look like they were throwing money at the job as well?
Yeah, exactly. With everything, everything, they were throwing the money in everything they had, their whole setup, the truck, they had the biggest hospitality, and they were putting big money into it and into the sport at the time. So and they obviously approached me midway through the season, along with many others Honda and Yamaha and all that. And
who was the biggest payer out of them?
Well, it was Kawasaki at the time. Kawasaki were offering the biggest money.
Yeah.
And I was quite confident in my own ability at that time. And, like I said, with the backstory involved, Nicky winning it on Repsol Honda, which is the whole reason why Rossi left Repsol Honda and went to Yamaha, because everyone knew it was the bike that was winning the championship, and Rossi wanted to prove that it was him winning the championship, which is why he went to Yamaha, which was at the time a clear, less competitive bike for everyone else, and and it was at the time, which he then made competitive enough to win the championship.
It was some story, that wasn't it? Not to go off topic,
exactly.
But that's sort of one of those.
So I wanted to do that. That was my intention. That was 100%. And with all of the knowledge that I'd built up and all of the experience and everything that I had of building the Suzuki chassis to what it was, to being classified as one of the best chassis in the paddock at that time, I knew I could take all of that experience and what we did. And I was quite knowledgeable with what was done and what improved and what didn't work, what did work, etc., that I could then take to Kawasaki. And I knew it was going to be a fucking extremely tough first year. But by second year, I could possibly be able, because they had the engine, which is something Suzuki just couldn't provide. And that something is so much harder to make, was the speed at those days back then.
Than making the chassis.
The chassis. The chassis was the easier part.
Did you say to them when they approached you and sat with you and had that meeting, did you say, guys, your chassis shit, but your engine is mustard, and I believe that You had that conversation with them.
And we did early, like very, very early.
And they said 100%, we'll do what you ask us to do.
Yeah, exactly. And they said, like, we will put everything into you. You will be the A rider. We will like build the bike and like everything. They gave me the assurance, everything that like they were going to build the bike around me. I was going to be the A rider.
Did you have was it Alex Hoffman that was your team?
Yeah, no, he was rode for it the year prior, but then they ended up bringing in Anthony West. So
yeah. And
so
didn't do a lot.
No,
which I don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe, and the main reason for that was because they spent the most like the money on myself, and. So they kind of had to get what they could get, like with the rest. But and Anthony was doing quite well at that time. You know, he was at the height of his career. But so that was the plan, and I personally wanted to. I didn't want to go jump on a
proven bike,
Honda, proven Yamaha, a bike that's already won the world championship in that class. I wanted to do it on a bike that's never won the world championship in that class ever, which I was fully confident I could have done, and
there was never a little bit of the Honda would be a nice thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like, of course, like, but with the attention and everything that they were showing me at Kawasaki and what they were like putting into the project, like I said, I believed more that I could do it, and I was going to get more gratification and satisfaction
that was
by doing it that way.
Yeah.
And as much as I did, of course, I wanted to ride the either factory Ducati, or I wanted to ride the V5, the Honda, and and all of or at the time whatever it was kind of the Yamaha and the Ducati was the bike to be on back in the time. Like the Honda had kind of dropped off a little bit, the 800 year, but they did build it back up. But I wanted to do it, like I said, on a bike that never won before. And like I rode the thing, literally was on the podium at Valencia at the final round, and then they test like on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, or whatever. Boom! I went from fucking on the podium to literally riding what fucking felt to me like the worst fucking bike I've ever been on in my life. Like the chassis was just fucking tiny. It was built around Randy DePunier and Shinya Nakano and like these 5'2" riders, like tiny fucking riders that literally.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
5'10", no, they're just put in comparison.
Riders that literally like the top of their heads are at my chest.
Yeah.
Jesus. And so I mean, those first few tests that I rode the bike, I had like actually quite a few crashes because my knee would be caught on my elbow. And so I couldn't hang off the bike, and my knee would get caught on my elbow, and I'd end up losing the front like mid corner because of it. And so I worked my ass off, like fucking really like busted my ass at the end of that year testing, in postseason testing in Malaysia, Australia, fucking Jerez, Barcelona. Like we were like flat out with testing, and to try and give them all the like knowledge, everything as much as I could, like in terms of chassis development, so that they could bring something at the start of the year to kind of get the ball rolling, and like get at least like
big top 10,
something like that. And anyways, we showed up at the and we've obviously went away for months and came away, started preseason testing. Nothing new. Like
all these promises,
nothing new, and there was all these promises, and there was nothing new, and it was quite shit because I was quite bad at the time with like I was always going on like the website forums and reading, like I would read like comment pages, and everyone like that obviously were like really strong, like fans or Suzuki fans or whatever of my career prior. Like everyone was like, oh, he's a fucking sellout, like he's just doing it for the money and like this and that, and like, which it fucking wasn't. Like the money was purely only a motivator to their intentions of wanting to fucking do this thing. Like, they wanted to do it, and that was pure.
The money had to meet the passion.
Yeah,
that was the commitment.
Yeah,
you're coming across. We'll make sure you get the big money.
Yeah.
And this is how serious we are.
And I was already at that time making $3 million a year with Suzuki, and so that extra 1 or 2 or whatever wasn't mean a whole lot. It wasn't. It was only a motivator that they were willing to put in that kind of money. They were serious about this project and what they wanted to do in terms of building the bike and so forth. And that's the way I looked at it entirely. But anyways, fucking...
Was this a 1-year deal for Kawasaki or 2?
2.
So you're at this point, you're very early on and going,
2 and a third-year option deal.
But you've committed very early on. You've gone down that road, and they're not listening to what you're saying. You must have gone, this is going to be a long 2 years.
Yeah, and we're not getting anything. And so anyways, and I was going through a bit of a tough time as well with it mentally. And like I said, it really fucking, it messed me up. Because I always, was quite heavily reliant on fan support and what they said. You wanted a bit of
reassurance.
And it was and that was because that was the farthest thing in my life that I was. I mean, I came from a family that fucking literally, we were on multiple times on the other side of the country, and my family literally ran out of money, and my grandma had to Western Union us fucking money just to be able to get home, because we had no money for fuel to even drive home from some of these cross-country trips. So I knew what it was like to come up in a low-level income, a low-income family, and and that was fucking far from my intention, was being a sellout. So to be called that and branded that was kind of it kind of fucked with me a lot.
Of course you did. It does cut you deep, doesn't it?
And so it was quite bad. And I was honestly, and then also sleep issues I've always had. And I ended up, I'd be up and I was at this time newly married, because I got married during the off season of 2007 and ended up, getting married at that time. And then the whole Suzuki, start of the year at Kawasaki was just a fucking nightmare. And so what I ended up doing was, even though the bike remained exactly the same through the whole fucking start of the year, I started overriding the bike to obviously try and get the results I was getting on the Suzuki. Which on a bike that was nowhere near capable of getting those results. And so I was fucking injuring myself all the time. And so I was breaking bones all the time. I was fucking riding with broken bones consistently. And I felt like I still had to prove myself. And
And what age were you at this point?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. That's still very, very young to go through a lot.
It's a lot on your plate, isn't it?
It's a lot on your plate, and you're going through that. And then is that what started the...
So no, and I, like I said, I always used to drink, and get fucking obliterated. When I drank all the years prior, but it was the party. I would
the buzz
party,
of the party and the adrenaline
of the party and everything. And when I drank, I would get fucking drunk. I always did, and always, did have the huge parties and stuff like that. But problem was that year I then started to drink fucking, not only physical pain away, but fucking emotional pain, and it just got heavier and heavier and heavier.
Vicious cycle.
And just continually escalated throughout that entire year.
And got more and more reliant.
And more reliant. And then the whole fact that I was what the fuck? I'm making more money than I ever have. I've done all of this to build my career to this, and now I'm on fucking hold because the bike they don't want to bring me the fucking parts that we're requesting.
What was there? Every time you're pulling them up every day.
It's coming. Oh, there's been a delay at the factory. It's been this. There was always an excuse.
They bought
that's even for the team managers.
And the engineers didn't even know, because then that. The team manager was also just as upset as I was. He was also getting just as upset as I was, during this whole time. Michael Bartholomew, who's a Belgian, but I don't even think the factory guys knew what the fucking problem was. And Japanese culture and business, they're in a different way. So even the engineers couldn't go back to the bosses at the factory and be whether they knew what was going on or not. Couldn't be
it's a huge
what the fuck are you doing?
Thing, isn't it?
And it's a respect thing. They couldn't go and yell at their bosses. So I don't even think they fucking knew at the time what was going on.
What's going wrong in the middle ground, massively. You know, the lads on the ground, which are you lot.
And then it was luckily my crew chief that year at the time, like, caught on to it. But, like, midway through the season, they ended up bringing, like, what they seemed to be, like, new parts for the bike and everything. So they brought some new parts and stuff. And I was like, fuck, finally. Like, okay. And it was actually my crew chief that caught on. He said this was actually, like, a chassis from, like, 2 years ago that they used with Alex Hoffman, because it just made the bike slightly bigger, but it was just in no way fucking competitive with the modern, like, MotoGP bike. But he caught on and said that that's actually an old chassis from, like, 2 years ago. And anyway, so I had some of, like, the biggest crashes of my life that year, and like I said, the injuries and riding injured just accumulated. Like, I broke fucking 4 vertebrae in my back, done my knee, my shoulder, ankles, legs, just in that 1 year alone, because I was overriding the bike to try and get results that weren't possible at the time. And I went away that off season, and I was like I don't know what
you've got another 12 months to go.
Yeah,
that's
and
what I mean.
I got a whole nother year. I was telling my management, I need to fucking get off this fucking bike. I need to get off of this bike. I don't know what the fuck's going on. They're doing nothing in terms of development. Like, this is fucking me. Like, this is. And it was like I was in a bad place, like, mentally, like, really fucking bad place mentally. And like I said, I wasn't sleeping. Like, sleep was gone. Like, I wasn't sleeping at all.
But we touched on that before we came on here. I've had about 3 hours sleep. I was trials riding yesterday, and I got back at 1 a.m, and then the baby had me up at 4, and I don't sleep well. And we were talking about that sleep thing, and it's the tablets they give you to try and help you with sleep make you feel shit the next day. So then you just opt for, I don't want to do this. I'll muddle through. It's hard, isn't it?
Exactly.
And then you're trying to function.
Yeah, and then it just and then I was in, like, quite a bad, like, depression and went really bad. And it was until that off season that they finally came, and then that was it. They made it. They made the decision that they were pulling out of MotoGP, and they were, like, entirely, like, pulling out. They were done. They pulled the plug, which they obviously made the decision that year before, like, just prior to the season starting, which is why we had not a single fucking part that entire year in terms of development, like, not one. And
you got an old frame. What are you moaning at? We pulled that out and dusted it off.
It was crazy. So Kawasaki themselves had a contract for MotoGP for another, like, 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And so they had to put bikes on the grid, or else, like, they were going to get fucking, like,
massive
20,
fines.
30 plus million, whatever euro, like, fines. So they actually eliminated the name Kawasaki. They obviously eliminated the name Kawasaki, but they did a deal with Dorna that they were still going to produce the bikes with Kawasaki. So, and I know what the reason was behind it. So Kawasaki, I mean, they came to me and they said, look, unfortunately Kawasaki are no longer going to happen, and we're going to be pulling out of MotoGP, but it's going to be called Hayate Racing.
That was it, yeah.
Because so that way that they could change the contract and so forth. And then they approached me and they said, like, thinking that, like, I was obviously, like, still, like, very motivated to race the bike and
continue.
So forth.
Yeah, I think not.
And so they came to me and said, okay.
They honestly thought you were still keen to continue.
Yeah, and so they came to me and said, okay, like, unfortunately, obviously, we want to do this project, and obviously we got to put bikes on the grid, but we just want to know, like, we want you to ride for us and continue, but with the new project and everything, and Kawasaki pulling out of the GP, we want you to forfeit half of your contract money to race for us, like, next year, and then you can have the seat for next year.
Oh my!
And I was like, the fucking cheek of it. I said, I wanted fucking as far away to be. Fucking didn't want to touch that thing the rest of my life. Like, I wanted as far away from it as I could. And the fact that they even, like, approached me with that was, like, almost laughable.
That's so bad.
And I was like, fuck them. Like, fuck that. Like, I can't, no way. Like, I'm not doing that. And told my manager, fuck that. I'm not doing that. Like, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. And so ended up, luckily, like, my management did at the time had, like, a fucking perfect, like, they were super good with the lawyers, and we had an airtight contract. So we got out of that deal
because of Kawasaki folding.
And yeah, exactly. So, but we got out of, but I was still contracted under Kawasaki because my contract was with Kawasaki, but they wanted me to sign a new deal, which is why they changed the name. But the whole reason of them changing the name was because they wanted me to sign a new contract where they wouldn't have to pay me
for less money.
And they'd have to pay me for fucking, way less than what they were. But I said, fuck you, I'm not doing that deal.
And with no development because they'd already come forward.
Yeah, I'm not even fucking going to touch that bike. Like, I don't want to be on it and it's not going anywhere. I don't race fucking for that. Like,
and they did you the favour by folding, basically.
They
got you out of the
exactly. So they got me out of the contract, but at the same time, they fucking didn't because I was still contracted under Kawasaki.
Oh, right.
So because they were fucking upset that I didn't do what their plan by them changing the name and going with that contract and everything, because I didn't go with that, deal, which they were trying to fuck me through anyways. They kept me in my contract, so I couldn't ride anything else the following year. So then they held me to my contract, personally, so that I couldn't
pay you.
Yeah, I mean, I got the money.
My contract.
They paid me.
And they paid you up to...
Yeah, exactly. But I was stuck without a ride. And unfortunately, like I said, in Grand Prix, you're quickly forgotten.
You're only as good as your last result. Yeah.
And I knew what was happening. And it was shit. Because I couldn't even do a test ride. I couldn't do anything. I was fucked. I could not physically ride anything other than Kawasaki, and then I didn't have the greatest relationship with that at the time. So
there was no option for a Kawasaki World Superbike or AMA.
No, but it was, our relationship wasn't good enough at the time, and I didn't want to go World Superbike. I wanted to go Grand Prix and so forth. But regardless, that wasn't an option either. And
they did fuck you then.
Oh yeah, massively.
It wasn't until July, August, and then so that's when my drinking went even insanely out of control, where I crossed that line into being a severe, I crossed that line into being quite severe alcoholic, and I was drinking so heavily and consistently still, like I said, from the emotional pain, physical pain, all of it. And then I just carried on, and then it got to the point I couldn't stop. I no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop. And I had nothing but time on my hands. So that's all I did was drink, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I mean,
do you think some of that came right back from when you lost your dad? Do you think there was any still underlying from...
Yeah, I think there was a lot of it. It was emotional, pain that I was going through. It was a lot of the grief and feeling a letdown and depression. And it all kind of was stemming. And like I said, it got bad. I was I wouldn't get out of I didn't get out of bed until I had a quarter bottle of fucking fifth of whiskey, a liter of whiskey, a quarter of that. I'd have to start the day and feel fucking remotely normal, which I'd then consistently drink through the day, and
then I just let it
and then went through, and then I went from that to then finally boom, Kawasaki, it was just out of nowhere, finally released me out of the contract in July, August, and there was nothing, no rides, nothing available. And then there was with Sticky Honda in World Superbike, which I took the deal of, and where I was literally because I didn't want to show up. I never even prior, I never showed up to races, obviously, still drinking the nights of or during race weekends and so forth. But the problem was I was showing up at these races with fucking bad because of how much I was drinking prior and stuff, and not being able to stop. I was having severe alcohol withdrawals, fucking showing up to these races all that year, shaking, no sleep,
Were you getting any support with this? You were just doing this cold turkey yourself?
And I would do that.
People don't understand how dangerous that is. People die from alcohol. The thing is, when it comes to any drug, and alcohol is a drug,
But alcohol
drugs
is the only alcohol can actually be fatal.
Yeah,
like,
it can. If you cut alcohol straight out your system,
like cold turkey.
It can kill you straight out. You know, even heroin addicts can stop in cold turkey naturally off.
All of them.
But
except alcohol is the one that can be fatal.
I was going to ask you the question. You know, throughout all of that, were you dealing with all of that just you?
Yeah.
Or was there a support
I was hiding
network
it.
there?
I was hiding it.
I was going to ask how many.
I was even hiding it from my wife, who was closest to me.
She must have known.
She did, you know what I mean? But she did to a certain extent, but she didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah.
And I would hide it, and I was quite good, like I said, at putting on autopilot. Like I would go into autopilot. Like I wasn't even a fraction of myself, like of what, you know, I felt like I was living my life through somebody else's eyes, and I would go into autopilot, but, you know, and she slept like a baby always, and so the second she was asleep, I'd be, you know, down in drinks or heading to the store to get more alcohol for the next day. And it was a fucking bad cycle I was in. I was bad.
I must say, I've got a few friends who have been going through some serious demons themselves, especially drink orientated and drugs. And I'm not just saying this because sitting here. They've read your book and it's really helped them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I'm not just plugging your book, and it's really important to talk about that because
that's why I was so, you know, because racers are so nervous about putting their real lives out there, and you know, the real kind of stories behind the fucking stories that make, you know, motorcycle racers so famous and you can
polish. That's the thing. A lot of people could polish up the act.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's been open and raw. It's you know, we're sitting here with John Hopkins. It's you know, the drugs, the drink, the women, and it's that's amazing. But you've shown an incredibly raw side of that in this book, and it's just, and people who listen to this podcast, and Chrissy prided himself on helping people, and you're doing that. So you can get this an audio file. You can get it on buy the hard copy. That's Martin Rouse's father's. You'll have to sign that. I'll get bollocked if you don't sign that. By the way,
we've sort of gone down a rabbit hole I was going to go down at the end, but I actually sent you an Instagram message after I'd read that because, and I didn't expect you to reply. So don't.
Yeah, sorry,
don't be daft. Don't be daft.
My Instagram. I had to everyone out there.
Don't be daft.
I never look. I get so mad. I never look.
But I didn't write it for a reply.
I tried to.
I wrote it because I had to put. I don't want to sound like I'm kissing your ass here, but I had to write something down to just basically put my thoughts down.
Yeah.
Because me and Chrissy had a number of conversations about basically mental health in racing. It's something that we both felt very strongly about.
People don't understand. At the end of the day, we're human. We're human, and we go through the same fucking things. And I was having this grand life. I was making $5 million a year. I bought my dream. I married at the time the woman of my dreams, who I was madly in love with. We were supposed to have in our honeymoon year. Bought this mansion on top of the hill in the one town I wanted to live in my entire life. And I'd never been so fucking severely depressed in my life. And I had the worst depression of my life. And and the fact that I knew of everything I had on the outer core of that only made my depression worse, because I was like, what the fuck do you have to be
struggling with guilt?
What the fuck do you have to be depressed about, you fucking wanker? Come on, pull your fucking finger out. Why are you depressed? And then I'd have this constant battle with myself and feel even more shittier because I had that depression. And
but I think the
snowball effect of just going deeper.
The drink and the drugs thing is something that so many of us in the bike racing world have had a struggle with. I've struggled with it.
Yeah.
John McGuinness, he's spoken very openly about the struggle with it.
And then also in America, they have
they're even worse for it, aren't
we
they?
have the opiates, the opiate painkillers.
And they just hand that out anywhere, don't they?
I mean, they just give them fucking
sweets,
sweets, and they're, you know.
But there's nothing.
And I went through that was, and I mean, I was on levels of painkillers that would fucking instantly kill the average person. I was on insane and basically, I mean, the opiates, it's same as heroin. I basically became a full-blown fucking heroin addict, but even though I was taking the painkillers, and so forth. But like I was like full blown
and mixing them with drink and everything,
and mixing them.
And I don't think it doesn't matter whether you're earning $6 million a year, living in a mansion with fucking Ferraris and anything else, or whether you're living in a 2 up, 2 down terrace house. That struggle's the same.
Yeah, exactly.
That battle, that constant psychological, the thing of laying there in the middle of the night, riddled with guilt. No one's there to help you. Your missus is asleep next to you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to go downstairs and have another swig of whiskey and take a few more tramadol.
Yeah.
And that's where I was at with it. And then you just create more and more problems for yourself. Yeah. And it's horrendous. My dog was what saved me. McGuinness always takes the piss out of me because I always say it's the dog that saved my life. But to me, it was.
Same as me, my little nugget. That's why I have him tattooed on my chest. Like, that's the reason I have him.
Yeah.
Like, because he got me through the first year of my sobriety. I put my wife through so much trauma and stuff through the first 2 years. I don't blame her at all. That, you know, it was my first year of sobriety that she ended up divorcing me, like, because there was just too much. Like, even though I got on the right track and sobriety and all that, like, there was just too much damage that I had caused for her to ever like be able to. Yeah. So even though that was our first divorce, but
because you remarried,
yeah, so we had two. But anyways, that it was my dog that saved me through that. You know, fast forwarding through that. But the only reason why I was so open and honest and everything, like in my book, was because I am so happy and thankful and grateful to be where I'm at today with my and got out of the other side when literally, like, even though I don't think I would have ever gone through it, like I at the final stages, it was so bad. Like, suicide was a consistent, like, I didn't want to live another day in the hell that I was, that cycle and the hell and everything that I was in, I tried everything. I tried church, I tried religion, I tried multiple detoxes and
didn't everything. You check yourself into rehab eventually?
Yeah, I went to rehab, like, and my family finally called like an intervention because there was no more hiding it. And like,
and you were doing this while actually actively being a professional motorcycle racer.
Going through this and in and out of detoxes to try and dry out prior to races, and
that's like, incredible.
Yeah, it was bad, like super, super bad. And it was, and just get to enough of the stage prior to a race where I wasn't like shaking and like going through the withdrawals.
And to round it off, obviously it's a problem that builds up over time, but you were turning up, going manipulating yourself to go cold turkey, nearly killing yourself doing that. How long was that process? Like the real rough years during racing, was it 2, 3?
Yeah, like
4?
2 or 3 years.
And
like,
you were still having.
That's a long time to be having that battle as well. That's a fucking long time.
That's a long time considering suicide as well as racing to keep a job. You know, it's just this is the 100% the wrong word and also the right word. The achievement of being able to keep a career, stay alive, and go through that.
Do you know the beautiful thing about that, which maybe we've got all deep and meaningful here, but it is a topic that people don't talk about because, well, fucking blokes. It's
that was my whole. I hid it.
You got away, but you can't do it.
Every way possible. Like, I hid it, and I was always like, "Fucking, I can deal with this. Like, I can fucking beat this. Like, fuck this. You know, I've beat everything else and done everything else myself." And like that sort of weakness was I never wanted to show. That to me was weakness, and I never wanted to show that even to my family, my friend, my wife, anyone. Like, I didn't want to show that something was fucking. I needed help, and asking for help was something I couldn't do back then.
I was going to say was, I think the beautiful thing about that period is those horrendously dark times, and that's a hell of a period to have to push through that. And I don't know how you managed 2-3 years of that, but to come out the other side of it, I bet your life now is very, very you're very, very grateful and balanced in a lot of things because of that.
And I to this day, like it's fucking, people might sound like it's crazy because like I never, and I also damaged my body in fucking really bad ways over those years, and like a lot of injuries prior and so forth. But I am grateful.
Yeah,
I am great. I am great. I wouldn't change it. No. I wouldn't go back.
I say the same about my struggle.
I am grateful for every bit of it.
Yeah.
Like of course I would have liked to have done more in my career and gone farther in my career than what I did. I believe I could have gone farther than what I did in my career to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, I don't regret any of it. It happened the way that it happened, and I am a much better human being now, and learned things in those years, and learned things now, and have things installed that were physically installed that I would have otherwise never learned.
That is a great way to look at it.
The way, just my whole outlook on life, and my gratitude, and my appreciation for things, and
do you sometimes have a little moment to yourself when you are getting pissed off for certain things where you go, John, a few years ago, that's the situation.
Yeah,
look where you are now, and you fucking have a bit of a word with yourself.
Yeah, exactly, and I do, and I obviously went, and still, like, to this day, I'm still in like recovery, like they say, like I'm still sober, and I'm working the 12-step, like I do the AA and the whole.
You support with them, don't you?
Yeah,
you give time back to
the 12 steps would like literally saved my life. Like I said, prior to just going to rehab, I had done all of it, which it didn't work for me. None of the other stuff. And like I said, I was on the cliffside of the beach in San Diego, my nearest beach. And because I would just go there and sit there and drink, until, I could make it back in time, with my wife not getting suspicious of where I was or anything. And I would go, and I remember, and I did that, that went on whenever I was back in California and off seasons and so forth. I would sit during those years on that cliff so many times, just down in alcohol, drinking as much as I could before I drove home, just to get through the night, because the withdrawals would set in by 2 a.m. and then I have to drink more. And so the cycle was just insane. And and then having to buy enough alcohol that night to hide in the garage, so that my wife didn't see it. So I had enough the next day to get through all the withdrawals.
Did any of the other racers know what you were going through?
No, nobody. Even my closest friends. It was a secret. Nobody, honestly, nobody. I never even confided in anybody of what I was going through, because I was so ashamed of it. I was so ashamed of where I had gotten to. And I felt like it was something, I don't know, there was still part of me that thought I could beat it myself, and it just wasn't happening. And I did everything to try doing it myself, and it was impossible.
Wow.
I just find it amazing how, even sitting here, you're talking about the past years, and it could very easily be regrettable, but 5 minutes into that beginning of that conversation, you don't see it as regret, but you don't see it as it's no one should be in those situations that you're in. That's an incredible outlook on it, going, well, it's happened, it was shit, not proud of it, but I've learned more from it. And you think, that's when you put it like that, that is incredible.
And that prepared me for fatherhood in ways, and it taught me to be a better human being in all aspects, in terms of appreciation, gratitude, just in so many factors. And I used to just look at, and it taught me things that I wasn't initially, to ask for help, not to be ashamed to ask for help. Those sort of things aren't weaknesses, it's more looked at as strengths. Whereas
there's a bigger person that can pick the phone up and say, I am in a shit position here, can you help me?
Yeah, and not to be ashamed of asking for help in certain situations. And multiple things I would have never otherwise learned. And without
going through that struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
That's mental, isn't it?
And it did, like I said, taught me things that like I knew. It taught me things like that I knew. I don't think I would have ever learned. But like I said,
on a lighter note, you're into your country music, aren't you?
I love country.
I fucking love my country music as well. What's your go-to song?
Well, I've got quite a few. I mean, I love. Even though he's gone a bit pop, like I do love a bit of, I love Alan Jackson, so he was, but I meant like, even though he's gone a bit pop, I like Brad Paisley.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I thought you were going to say Luke Combs, to be honest.
No, I was going to say, my head is like, the lack of, I didn't sleep properly last night, but, what's his name? He's married to Gwen Stefani.
Keith Urban. It's not. No, it's.
But God's Country
Yeah.
by what the hell is his name? I'm like, he's like.
I'm thinking Mr. Lucky Bastard's married to Gwen Stefani.
I can hear his voice as well. I know the song.
It's Brad. Not Brad Paisley. I love Brad Paisley, but
it's not Luke Bryan, is it?
No. I can't believe I'm like. He's
literally YouTube.
I've got every one of his songs.
Class.
I feel guilty.
Blake Shelton.
Blake
Shelton.
Yeah.
I mean, even though his music quite pop, like God's Country, and like he's got other ones. I like Cole Swindell, and like I
You're
just
a
all
Darius
of them.
Rucker
like,
fan?
Huh?
You're
Yeah,
a Darius
Rucker. Yeah.
Wagon Wheel's my go-to.
Yeah. But I like I even, because I was speaking with my writer Rory Skinner like today about
what a man in his mind.
And we were just talking about it today, and he's like, oh, because I didn't know they still did like the whole Super Bowl thing, and they had just started it towards the end of my BSB career, and I had it like, and I used to have American Ride by Toby Keith. That would play during my like the song I had during my Super Bowl lap.
Well, I once remember Whittam interviewing you, and when he'd walked away, he said, "You all might think that he's listening because you had your earphones on. You might all think he's listening to some rock music. Nope, Hopper's listening to country music."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Yes, boy."
I had country music. I just loved the flow and the tune to it. Like that's what I would listen to before I ride.
I love it.
That helped you through as well, through the shit times, the country music job.
Yeah, no doubt.
I tell you what, I'm glad you brought it up, the BSB element. We are here at Brands Hatch BSB. Let's talk about your transition to BSB. You've done the MotoGP. So what was that initial push over the edge? What was that decision to come to the British Isles?
So basically, it was like right after. It was like right when I first got sober, and
how long have you been sober now?
Well, I did have a relapse like after my mum died. So I ended up having like a relapse, which, like I said, I'm not ashamed of. No. But no, I'm like almost 2 years now.
2 years.
Sober again.
But prior to your mother, God love you?
Yeah, I had a few years.
Yeah,
like 6, 7 years. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you were changing over, you were becoming sober, and you were getting sober, and you came, and then go from there. So you. No, but I decided it was my first year of sobriety. I wanted to stay in America, so because I was I had a big almost aha moment during that first few months of sobriety and the program, and I was like, this is actually, I started to get glimpses again of myself, and I wanted to stick with that and continue on building that. And so I figured, fuck it, I'll race here in America. And I did a deal with the team that I first started riding for in America, and the team owner John Ulrich, and we put a deal together. I forfeited my whole Monster contract, which at the time was 250,000 or something like that, to make the project happen, because he at that time wasn't doing super bikes. But so I put the deal, and I was like, I want to race here in America. And then anyways, we started the year, and what I didn't realize is my wrist, something, I don't know what had happened, but something happened, but my wrist, in the span of 1 or 2 months, just literally fucking just cliffed,
went to nothing. And I had zero from the very start of the year to the first race in Daytona, in March, something like that. I had zero range of motion in my wrist. It locked. completely. And so like the first 2 rounds, I had to ride. I was having to ride
your elbow,
like that and have to shut off just to be able to shut the throttle off. I was having to shut
I remember seeing James Towson ride that at the end of his career. That's how he was having
the
same thing.
I was having to let off to grab, and I was like, this is fucking dangerous, and I can't ride. I got like a fifth and like a fourth, and I was like, fuck this, like this is
no risk.
So I went to the doctor and I was like, look, I got to get this, and then that started a whole nother. I went like 3-4 months like looking for a doctor, and every doctor, but I went to doctors everywhere in Europe, all over America, Australia, everywhere, and every doctor said, nope, you're fucked, you got to get it fused. Even the doctor that had like done the surgeries, all my surgeries in the first place, said, nope, you got to get it fused. Like you're basically going to have no risk the rest of your life. And I refused to accept that.
Yeah.
And so I went like 3 or 4 months traveling the world, literally trying to find like a doctor. And it was crazy. Like I was almost conceded to the fact that I was going to have no risk the rest of my life. And it was funny how it worked out. I was I was in a meeting with my managers down in San Diego, who were based in San Diego at the time, and like I went and met with them, and like we were talking about it. And then one of the managers in the office like was a big fan of American football. Actually overheard, like, because I was quite emotional like about it, like that I may never ever get to race again or have a wrist or ride, fucking God forbid, like again. And so, anyways, he overheard and he came to me and he just said, and he was a big fan of American football. He just read about this crazy revolutionary surgery that was just done by a local doctor in San Diego that might be able to help me. So fucking, I was like, that day we called him. I said, get me an appointment. I don't give a fuck what you got to do. Get me in there. Went, saw him. He said, look, I think I can help you. And then and he said, yeah, I think I can do it. Like, I think I can help you. And so he did. And he said like this, but then I had to listen to doctor's orders, and which was like, doing the whole process, knowing nothing for like 2 months and like having the wrist fully stationary. Anyway, so I missed the whole season like of American Superbike, which I was supposed to be racing apart from the final 2 races, which I came back for at the end of the year, and then fucking put it on the podium in both races. Like, and so I was like, fuck it, I can't wait. I want to do that again next year, but have a full wrist, and I think I can win it. And it was quite a, it was, I don't know, it was a big ordeal, but this guy was kind of like a father figure to me, because he, the one that gave me the ride. Anyways, it all worked out. Like I forfeited the monster money, like I said, and it was a big ordeal. Anyways, I found out like it was around January the following year, season was starting. We were putting the same deal together. I don't care. I'll forfeit the monster money. Everything was on the cards for the same thing. Anyways, Monster called me and they're like, hey, why the fuck is, why is John Ulrich, why is he coming to us and trying to like do the deal? Like, why is he wanting to do the deal with us like that? And obviously I built up, super good relationship with Monster, and they were like, look, we just, if you're going to give that money away, whatever, that's your deal, but we'd prefer to keep the deal the same. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, what? I don't know.
So you'd sort of gone behind your back.
So yeah, he had gone and he had gone to Monster and tried to get the money for the team, and was even willing to tell him like, and that they would send it to them directly and doing a deal with them. But yet he had no intention of hiring me the next year, because he was still quite sour that I was sat on the sidelines the whole year, the year prior.
So he didn't even take into account that it was an injury.
Yeah,
there was no empathy or fuck all.
Yeah, it was was like a dagger through the heart.
The father figure is a strong terminology. Let's face it.
And
that was why I was struggling to process what you were saying.
Exactly. And this guy was like massive father figure and all of that, and that was like a fucking dagger to the heart. Like that was pretty like
that's
that was a bad ordeal, and that was it. And he had no intentions of fucking having me ride for the team or anything that year, and it was already January. And then so I was like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, fuck, I'm fucked. Like, there's nothing now. Fucking this late in the year. It's like, what the fuck am I going to do? And
there's
then,
no money. What age? Sorry, I always thought the age thing, just for the timeline element. So what age were you roughly at this?
Or what year
Like-
was this?
like-
16? 17?
No.
No, it'd be earlier,
No,
wouldn't it? Be like-
way
it'd be
earlier.
like-
This was 2011.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, right.
2011.
Yeah,
2011.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was still early in the sobriety and everything.
Oh,
and
my God.
And it was that off season, like that I said, I went through the divorce of my wife.
Yeah.
So my dog was the one that and then my wife, my dog and skydiving is what
Yeah.
kept me sober through my divorce and kept me, on the sober path and on the right track. And then that all happened with fucking the team, which was like fucking even tougher.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck it. Like, I need to race. Like, I want to race. And, so I might as well just fuck it and go to Europe. I don't know. And then I was like, maybe I might as well do BSB because that's, at least I'm back in Europe's eye. So I called my old man, a team manager, Paul Denning, who ran the Crescent Suzuki, BSB team.
Yeah.
Who I worked with multiple years as my team manager in Rissa Suzuki. And so I spoke to him and he said, well, fuck, we're folding. We're folding this year. We're actually pulling out of BSB, because he was focused on the Suzuki role with team manager. He said, we're actually we're canning the BSB team this year. And I said, well, fuck, what if I do the same thing? What if I give all
I'll put the funding in.
I'll put the funding in and put the monster money in, and then then we can we do it? Fuck yeah, well, we'll do it. And then so we did it. And
Imagine him hanging up that call that night, going, you'll never guess what's happened.
Bringing all the mechanics, boys. We're going another year.
Yeah, but he hadn't even told the mechanics yet. So
Right.
he hadn't even told the mechanics yet, that they were even folding.
Jesus.
Or and he had, that's why, but they still didn't have any riders or anything yet.
Yeah.
And so, but he hadn't even told the mechanics yet. I think some of them knew that they were done, but so yeah, it was.
Did that feel like a lifeline for you?
Yeah, it was.
Which is
huge.
mental, because now if we interviewed that team now, it'd be like, John threw us a lifeline.
Yeah,
that's why
and that was
such a good.
huge,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it was a huge lifeline for me. So I was like, fucking, I was over the moon.
That was the Fixie Crescent bike, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it was cool because they actually got quite a bit reception to hear that I was coming to BSB.
Yeah.
It went nuts.
Yeah, it was
Not a bit.
So
It went nuts.
they did a deal with Samsung, Samsung, and so they ended up getting the funding back, which I ended up doing a deal later with Paul, to make the money back in terms of bonuses, and that I got I had a really good bonus structure for that year. And it was just it was incentive for me to also do well and so forth. And so.
And you've never raced at a BSB race,
never,
not a British
never.
track.
And apart
nothing.
from Donington, I'd only ever ridden.
Of course, you would have done Donington,
Yeah. So but Donington was the only track I knew in the UK. That was the only track I'd ever ridden at, except for. I did 2 parade laps here at Brands Hatch back in 2006 on my Rizla Suzuki.
You know when you get the commentator team, I'm having a pick on you. He's a commentator for Eurosport, right? But you know when they get the commentator team and they always go, "Oh well, you've gone from big wide tracks and you're coming here dead narrow, not much runoff." Did that ever run through your mind, or did you just go around Brands and went?
But that was funny because everyone expected that.
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean. Everyone
expected that. But if you understand the fucking AMA circuits that I grew up racing,
the barriers there,
and the barriers and the walls, and
over blind
I still say the tracks that we, that I in my era, in the 99, 2000, 2001. In AMA are fucking far more dangerous than any BSB track that they are to a certain extent more than any other European circuits, but I was used to racing way worse in America even, in terms of danger wise.
Did you not turn up though somewhere like Cadwell and Knockhill?
Yeah, and I was Yeah, like Cadwell was like, oh my god, like,
Yeah.
and that was the biggest part of that was just the width of the track. 'Cause I mean, it's literally
narrow.
like, as it was by far the most narrow track I've ever ridden in my life. Like
Really?
I honestly thought like,
And he's a motocrosser.
I thought like growing up, like I thought when the first time I went there and pulled up, I thought like the where the mountain is. I thought the mountain section, I thought it was the fucking service road. Like, I genuinely thought that was like
class.
the service road
Yeah.
to like, where is the track? And like,
That is class.
but yeah, it was funny. Like, so we put the deal together. It was like, we got like a huge like response, and it was funny as well. Like, again, fucking instantly, I had loads of like doubters. Like,
yeah.
I had fucking all kinds, even all the press. Like, there was a guy, he's like, what's his name? I think his name's like Simon Patterson, or he does like the MotoGP, like he does like journalist. He's like a journalist. Well, he was like the MCN guy at the time.
Right.
And he wrote like all kinds of shit that preseason, like about how bad I was gonna be, and like this like MotoGP prima donna is gonna fucking be shit. Like he was quite like
and
harsh
there's putting fuel on the fire for you.
And so I was like, and I was, and then obviously the first track that we did was like Brands Hatch Indy, and that was a bit of a head fuck, like racing such a short fucking track, like that was a bit weird.
Like a 50-second lap, like
like 40, 45.
They
like
are
44 seconds. We used to do it in 44 seconds, 43, 44.
Jesus, there you go.
And so that was a bit of a head fuck. So I was like fifth or something. I don't know, fifth or sixth, like my first race. But
did you expect to turn up with British going, look, Howie, MotoGP lad, I've been around the block. I can race top.
But I knew how competitive it was, and I knew how good the British riders were going to be. I mean, I had no illusion that I was going to like
you're respectful
go up
about it,
and win. Like, I had no illusion of that whatsoever. I was realistic, and even like all my media and stuff like that. Like, and my new sobriety also was teaching me to be a far more like level-headed, because I always used to, just speak my mind and my confidence, and I, and it would come off cocky and arrogant and
be more
in the
humble.
past, but a lot more humble and humility and so forth. And so I had no illusion and like that I was going to go and fucking just destroy the championship or anything. Like, I knew it was going to be fucking tough. I knew that, it was going to be difficult, but but it was quite cool, because I literally, like, everyone also said like Alton Park was going to be a fucking I won't get my head around, it'd be horrible, and fucking boom, I went and won my first race.
Class.
And that was the first round that I won. My first ever race was Alton Park, and ended up having like a great season. And then that was when the whole ordeal, like I said, like, also, like, Paul could see I was fired up, I was motivated, I was riding like, the rider he knew I was. So that's when he started giving me like wildcard rides in MotoGP as well. So like I replaced Bautista early in the year at Jerez, which I wasn't really prepared for, because I hadn't even ridden the bike, and I was still kind of building up to, my level anyways. So it went all right though, and I still did all right and did well, but I raced there, and it ended up being a rain race that dried, and I still got into the points and did all right though. And then, carried on like fighting for the BSB championship. Like, I was in the top 3 consistently between Tommy and Shane. Yeah. We were, always fighting at the front. And then I did a World Superbike wild card, and it was funny. The main reason we did the World Superbike wild card was because it was before the BSB round at Silverstone. So the main reason the main reason that we did the World Superbike wild card was mainly because of that. Yeah. And like, I was on my full BSB spec Suzuki, so it was on BSB electronic at the time, which was with nothing and so forth. Like, it was like, even the power, it was a full BSB spec, and I'd never ridden Silverstone prior to that.
Had you not?
No. Right. And so I went and showed up, and like, Friday fucking morning was the first time I'd ever seen Silverstone, the full track. And, we raced the full circuit. Yeah. And, so I showed up, and then fucking, I learned it and ended up taking a liking to it. And so Saturday, I ended up fucking setting the all-time lap record in qualifying and got pole position in the World Superbike, which like and was fucking, you know, at the time pretty awesome because like then I was like a good almost like 3-4 tenths like ahead of anyone else. Like so it was.
I would have been able to control myself. I would have just been really shouty, like loudly in the garage, going, "That traction map." Beautiful. Tell the lad that traction map is outstanding. They would be going, we need to play with the traction map right now. You know?
Yeah, and we so no, it was good. I mean, we were massively down on like speed and everything, like
just
compared to other. And that was probably that was like the best lap of my life. Like that I you know, there's always laps that I've done and even like pole laps and everything where I know personally there was a lot more time in it. Whereas that was the most like perfect lap in my life. Like I just all was put together and I don't think there was anyone anywhere in the world that could have like done it better. That like it was like a perfect lap for that time. And
if someone beat that lap time, how would you have taken that? No,
but they did. They did. But the thing is funny. It was beaten. Like 2 or 3. There was the following year. It was like 2 or 3 years later. Tom Sykes ended up beating it. But the lap was red flagged. And so Tom
so
ended
it didn't count.
So it didn't count. So
you got a bit longer.
I've still got the all-time lap record. Yeah, at Silverstone.
I just find that dead interesting because that's actually a fantastic question. That for the pot, we should have that with every guest, really.
Yeah.
What's your perfect lap? You know,
and that was like
that's dead interesting.
That was like perfect, and it was quite cool because. At the time, like, and so the bike, like I said, was way fucking underpowered. We had no electronics, so the race was harder. So I got 5th, I think, in race 1, and then like 6th, 7th in race 2. But I still destroyed the then factory Suzukis, which were like the All-Star Suzuki.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so I still destroyed them, and it worked out in Paul's favor.
Yeah,
because. Like, he was like, and he jumped in there like a fucking, he was like straight in there with Suzuki. So instantly he was like, well, we should have the factory Suzuki. Look at what we do. And And
did it work?
Yeah. So it worked, and boom, it got them into World Superbike.
Yeah.
And anyways, but that was one of 3. So the race before was here at Brands. I did like I was on the podium, and I think I won 1 or 2. I don't know, like all weekend in BSB.
Did you get any of the World Superbike technology passed down to the team? That was when you were saying Paul went to Suzuki and said, "Fucking look what we do."
Yeah.
As well as them getting the contract to go into
yeah, but I mean, already, I mean, it was forbidden to get anything.
You couldn't get anything more than what you had.
We couldn't really get anything more beneficial than what was already there.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, it was all like just the full factory, like electronics and everything, which we can't. We were only on Motec and so forth, but. Anyways, that was a part of a triple header. So that was a part of a triple header. I was racing 3 championships in 3 weekends. So I raced BSB, I did the World Superbike, and then I did the wild card at Brno MotoGP, which was my favorite track and my best ever like MotoGP finish and everything, where I was second and just fucking barely off of winning with Stoner. And that was a track I really enjoyed, obviously. First ever time I rode the GP bike, but a track I loved. And anyways, showed up and like I did the BSB winning the races, pole position in World Superbike. I was like, I'm fucking finishing this off with the MotoGP podium. Like I can fucking do it. I know it. And so we showed up on the Friday, and I was 6th fastest on Friday. And I'd only ridden the bike like once or twice the whole year. And so I was 6. I was P6. Because there was the rider at the time, Alvaro Bautista, obviously a current World Superbike champion. But me and him were 5th and 6th. And I was like, fucking, and I was like, I knew there was way more speed left in me, like before Sunday, like, because this was only Friday. And so I was feeling like quite confident, and then woke up on the woke up on the Saturday and it was fucking pissing it down rain, and just prior to that, a few rounds prior, I ended up having some like pretty bad like wet crashes. I was winning a race at Alton Park, and I ended up into I don't know what corner it is, like, but the second to last has the name, but it's
Druids.
It was the right hander, like that goes up over the hill, right there, hard braking there. But like you go mid track, like it's fucking gets slick there on the wet.
Yeah.
And anyways, I broke. I was leading the race, fucking had like quite a big lead, and I ended up like crashing there. And I like as soon as I touched the brakes, I ended up losing the front and crashing. And like I hit the wall hard, like fucking hard into the air fence and smacked that quite hard. And so I don't know, and so instantly like, and then I had another one where I hit the wall quite hard in the wet. So like it just instinctually like started to make me like fucking like whoa, and then so I crashed right in the morning, fucking first time lap. I wasn't used to the Bridgestone wets at the time, and Michelin, I think, no, it was Michelin at that time, Michelin wets, but I wasn't used to them. And like I went and I hit the fucking brakes, lost the front right, and I mean I was fast, like super fast, lost the front. So and I was sliding backwards this way. Oh,
here we go.
So my like head first and not knowing where I'm going. And like instinctually, I fucking instantly put my hands on the ground, everything to try and slow myself down, like to slow my body down. And then even though I had miles and miles of fucking runoff there, but I put everything down, trying to slow myself down. And I went in and then hit the curb and the gravel and just fucking
there goes your finger,
mangled the finger, and that was it. Mangled my weekend. Obviously it was impossible like to even try. It gotten so swollen, like there was no chance of me even remotely ever fitting a glove on to try and race. And like so that ended that weekend, and then I went back, had surgery, but I only had a couple weeks before the start of the showdown.
This is, by the way, to put it in context for the listener, this is the Tommy Hill masterpiece, final race, everything. Sorry, carry on going. Yeah, so hand was mangled back and forth from America. Yeah,
and so like I went, had surgery on, and I only had a couple weeks before the first race at Donington of the showdown.
Yeah.
And like I showed up, and it was like complete, like, I mean, it was still fully open, the whole like surgery scar and everything all the way down the finger. And the stitches, everything was all in it. And I told the doctor and my surgeon, like, who was kind of well aware of me and everything, you know, he knew everything. And like, I told him what was happening, what I was going to do. Like, so I said, just reinforce the fuck out of this thing. Cause I need to like, you know, I need to race with it, and I'm fighting for the championship. And she's like, yeah, no worries. And, anyways, went to Donington and like ended up doing the double. And like I ended up fucking going through like 5 or 6 pairs of gloves throughout that entire weekend, because I was having to wear new gloves for every time I was riding, because of the because the surgery scar was so like fresh and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was wearing new gloves all the time, and I ended up doing the double, winning both races. And fucking I got, you know, and then after the podium and everything on fucking Sunday, I was like, fuck, my fucking, this is hurting. Like, this fucking doesn't feel right. Like, it's fucking painful. And I felt the pain in it, like, even on, like, the, you know, day before, but I was like, oh, fuck it. And so, anyways, I was like, no, this ain't normal pain. Like, this is, like, super bad. And so I went to the local medical center, did the x-ray, and everything, like, it looked like a bomb had gone off. Like, you know, it was all separated. The bone was broken again. The metalwork was all like fucking scattered and broken and bent. And so, yeah, I was like, fuck. So like I was like instantly on a plane, only had a week and a half off. And so instantly back to the plane, back to America, saw my surgeon. He did the surgery, like did as much like of like laser therapy and whatever, like, you know, hyperbaric and as much as I could prior. Boom, on a plane, went to Silverstone at the time. Boom, podium both races. I think I won one, or podium both races. And same thing, blew it all to bits, and then had to get on a plane, boom, back to America. All right, like final one, another surgery, did what I could on the plane for Brands Hatch. And by that point too, my arm was already going like really red. Like, so there was like infection in there. There was quite bad infection. And like, you know, I've obviously just never even let myself believe that like it was affecting me, like, you know,
when
physically
it starts
or
going
mentally.
up your arm, it's getting in your blood, it's getting into all sorts at that stage.
So
isn't
it was like getting quite bad and quite heavy at the time, but I refused to you know, believe it, or obviously I wasn't going to do fuck all about it, like at that time. So I just carried on, and then obviously I had a little bit of a points lead. Like I went into that final round with quite a big, like decent, like comfortable points lead, but I knew it was Tommy Hill's like home track. So, and he was tough, and like he was earlier in the year when we raced here, and I knew how fucking hard he was going to be. But I knew all I had to do was just finish within vicinity of him, 1 or 2 places of him, which I was more than confident that I could easily do. And it happened that way. Like first race, I finished right behind him. Boom, that was fine, no big deal. Like it was all good. And then second race, go out, feeling good. I was right behind Tommy. Like we were fighting up like towards the podium, right behind him. Like I felt, but no, it was actually on the outlap. Like, so right at the start of the race, like on lap 1, fucking bike shut off, like electronics, my Motec, my dash, everything just went dead. Like fucking in the most random place, something that hadn't happened to me all year, never happened to me since,
bike
before,
just turned
after.
off.
The bike just turned itself off. And then like I reset, did everything, like pulled off, reset, like finally got it re-going. But I mean, I was fucking by this point over 3/4 of a lap down from the whole field, and so that was it. No points, nothing. Like fucking. So that led to. So I don't know. Like
he's by the way, for the audio listeners, he's smiling while he says this.
No, but like,
no, but it's
no, but like,
into that. Yeah, but into that race.
Yeah, so it left like fucking it. We were tied for points. Like, so I don't know. For a conspiracy, I don't know. I've had loads of fucking people like tell me there's even all my team believe like 100%. Like all of the crew chief and everyone on my team like reckon that, you know,
she got tampered.
That
foul play.
Yeah, because it was the organization has full control over the Motec electronics and every bike, and they have that capability quite easily, which our data guy even said like
wow,
they do. Oh. And I had an experience earlier in that year which was a bit like kind of shady at first, like a little bit. Like it was a Croft. We used to race at a track, Croft.
Yeah.
40 minutes from my house. It's like
it's a proper track.
And I took to it really well, and I was running.
Good track, fast.
Yeah, and I was running away with like a race there, and anyways, a guy had crashed, and there was the bike had a little bit of smoke, but the fire extinguished it. Nothing. Anyways, like, and I had already cleared off, like, I think it was like 5-6 seconds. I'd already like cleared off to like quite a big lead.
Yeah.
And it was like still quite early in the race. And they fucking brought the pace car out. They brought like, and they
budge you back up. Oh.
Yeah. And there was no real reason for them to do it. Like, and they didn't. And anyways, I just,
class,
whatever reason. But so, I don't know. For that one reason, it was like a little bit weird. And so I don't know. It happened the way it happened, and I've had weird shit happen like with electronics. So I don't know. I've never had anything remotely the same as that. Anyways, that's and the place that it happened, and the point where I was around no one else, and the safest point where I could pull off the track. I don't know. It was just a bit weird, but. Like it never happened, but it led to literally one of the greatest races that I was ever involved in. Even though I got the sour end of the deal, but like it was literally like whoever finished in front won the championship.
Is that the hardest you've ever ridden? Do you think?
Good question.
Mentally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mentally, mentally, that was the hardest. And
it's one of those where you think couldn't have done anything more there, or do you think you could have done anything different?
Well, I believe I could have if I was in a different state physically.
Right.
Everything that was that was holding me up already, but that had very little effect on because adrenaline had completely taken over, and the amount I overcame all of that mentally. Yeah. And the strength and everything effort I put into it mentally, like it wouldn't have been much, but that's the only thing that may have been that much better. Yeah. But because when you think how close it was, you only needed 1% improvement, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, it was just
that to put you there. It was,
I've got that on repeat on YouTube. Like it's just it literally it's one of the greatest moments in motorcycle racing history. Yeah, and you just thought, you get that old cliche, it could have been anyone's. That particular lap, it was just and I bet, and the mad thing is, I'm thinking about the lap now. It was just holy shit.
Slightly wide in the last turn, which just because I outbroke him and I was out braking, and I knew it because if you even watch it back, I actually am braking on wet spots.
Yeah. It was a damn track,
and it was still quite damp, and no one fucking never dreams of braking that hard on that inside of the track. So I knew I had to be quite cautious.
Was it you were prepared to put it over the fence?
Yeah,
it was
exactly. Exactly.
I'm either going to win this or I'm going to stick it through the wall.
But I didn't obviously want to sticking it through the wall would have. Then that's over definitely.
Yeah.
So I was on the limit though, because the front was sliding a bit. And
I'm going to watch it after this interview. I'm going to watch that again. I
think that's the one thing I could have done differently. I think I could have got away with just slightly using a little bit more brake.
Yeah.
And still running that a slightly tighter. I could have prevented him from coming.
I can't fully remember at what point, but. At what point was there a screen for you to know?
I knew it.
Did you?
I knew it. Even though it was that close, I knew I was because I was so laser focused on the stripe.
Yeah.
I saw I wasn't ahead of it. I saw because I was catching him back up.
Yeah.
But I saw I didn't actually. I knew he was.
You needed 5 yards, didn't you?
Yeah. Just 5 more yards, I would have been ahead of him because I had that much more momentum.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how well did you take that in yourself?
Not good.
No. No.
What a fucking answer. Not good.
It's the most honest answer you'd ever get. Is that
That's the best fucking answer.
It is
not good. I was fucking fuming. I was fucking fuming. Trust me, I had every bit of respect for Tommy and but I was fucking fuming because that was my race. So I was like,
it was a dead straight.
No.
Not good.
I'm sorry, but any other rider that didn't give that answer was a liar.
Oh, you 100%.
I'm not being funny. If you gave something there, my respect would have gone from you.
I did think for a minute you were going to be
I didn't even go. So I didn't even go to the podium. So when I came back, I normally I'm always, like I said, I was always with the fans. I'm always I'll do the wave in, and even after bad races, I'll do the wave in and fucking none of it. I rode back to the pits. I literally took my helmet off, fucking rode back, and obviously I was on the podium, so I was going to. That was it. I rode to the podium. Got to the podium, I took my helmet off, and then told my buddy at the time that was there, I said, dude, get my fucking scooter. Get my scooter. And because I couldn't be around anything. No. I didn't want to be around cameras. I didn't want to be around anyone at the time. And I jumped on my scooter, and that was it. I left Park Burme. I went into because my motorhome was in here. And like the only thing I wanted was a cigarette. So I was like, I need a cigarette. Like, and I came back here and fucking sat in my toilet, like with my fan, obviously, because I never smoked in front or anyone into the paddock or anything. Sat in the bathroom of my smoking in the fan in the air vent, like in the bathroom of my motor.
How many did you have?
Fucking 2.
2, yeah. One straight after.
Duct tape together.
Had 2, just thinking about it, like, and everything with my hand and like my fucking, I'm looking at my infection and I'm like, why the fuck do I do this? Like I was quite human at it, and I had to gather myself, and like that was my meditation. Like that's cigarettes, and that was the only thing that, like, because obviously, you know, I was sober, and that was the only thing that I could actually, and it was my like form of like meditation that could get myself down. And I finally like got enough, and I was like, fuck, I've got to like, you know, I've got to fucking handle this like a man.
Be
like
the sports
and then you know, everything, like my ghost riding the bike, I was like, I've got to show some fucking, you know, sportsmanship in this, and you know, really kind of came to. And so I rode back straight directly back to the podium, and then, like, you know, obviously it was quite delayed because Tommy ended up having to he did his fucking parade lap, all of that stuff. So it was quite delayed. So luckily I made it back in time without people noticing that I was gone for fucking huge amounts of time, so forth or whatever. And so I did. And
how people couldn't expect that, if you know what I mean. It's like, if you went away for it, how I think people would have totally understood. You know what I mean? It's like,
here's a question for you.
But I caught my crew chief as well. Like, my crew chief was nowhere near the podium. He was actually on the road, like,
smoking.
He was just sat like actually crying, like, because he was so like gutted about what had happened with the bike in race 2. So he was actually sat like actually literally crying, because me and my crew chief at that time, Les Pearson, who worked with like Taz Halloran last year, and you know, loads of riders, but who works in the World Superbike now and that, but it just fucking.
How would you have responded to a 6-year-old you coming to you at that point saying, can I have a pair of gloves off you, or can I have a helmet, or can I have a visor? You know, the experience that you...
But
I know it's a different situation.
I actually had loads of fans, because I came out of the motorhome, and obviously at that time I was quite big and in the paddock, but I had loads of fans outside of and I did take pictures and sign a few autographs, like, and there was a couple kids, like, and they actually asked me for knee sliders, and I said, well, I can't now, but I will later, like.
Oh, good man.
And which I did give them like knee sliders,
because I don't think anybody would have judged you at that point for just saying, I didn't do them all. Like, I had a big group, so I did like couple, took care of the kids, and then I was like, guys, I'm sorry, I gotta get back, and it's just not a good time, I'm sorry. And then went back, and I was like fucking devastated, but then, you know, and it was funny, I never even watched the race back or that lap back for like 5-6 years,
really,
like, at least. I
can understand.
I never even watched the race back, like, for a good 5 or 6 years. And then it was funny though, because me and Tommy ended up like down the road, became like quite good mates, and like really like good with each other, and you know, it happened. I was happy for him. Like, it, you know, it, you know, with because he was a great rider, and like he, you know, with the way he's going to retire in the year later, you know, that was like the highlight. You know, he deserved it. And, so and to literally, like, there's not a day that goes by in the UK where, like, I'll be at a fucking supermarket and I still to this day have fans coming up to me saying, like, stopping me for pictures and autographs, saying that.
Nice.
And bringing up that race, saying it was like the best one they'd ever seen in their life.
That's a part of history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Riders come and go, but history making is a very rare thing to do, and that was like,
it's hard to think of many ends to a season. You know, last season's done. It's this season now. But that was an end to a season that will always be it's etched in everyone's mind because of the way it finished, you know.
Not many riders have got their own mark and history in America, MotoGP, BS, but you know what I mean? You've left
World Superbike.
No, that's what I mean. You have left significant stamps you have riders that go and do a bit of it, but you have made significant, John Hopkins the name. Just write it down, engrave it in your walls. Yeah. I'm off next chat. No, you know what I mean? That's you know what that's nuts. That is nuts. But
and it's not just a little. It's not an appearance. You stamp the authority in every single one of them paddocks.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
whether pole positions, podiums, championships.
But I did hear you're a shit motocrosser. But we'll skip that now. I'm joking.
Am I right in thinking this is where it all came to an end as well, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it a crash here on the motor?
Yeah, exactly. And that was a tough year. And it was a bummer too, because I took to the Ducati quite well, and it was tough, like couple seasons, but I liked with the Moto Rapido crew, and they were a good team, and I was like fucking especially pumped that the B4 was coming out the next year, and I was actually really motivated because like everyone was like, oh man, this bike, like it's going to suit you. Like, and I was really looking forward to it myself. And I was like quite excited about it because the, previous Panigale was quite outdated and losing its competitiveness, but we were still thereabouts. But I mean, well, fuck, I was on Super Pole. I set the fucking fastest lap of brands at that point. I know it's just Q2. I ended up doing like a 25.003, and I was so fucking annoyed because like I knew I had more in the lap, but I was just fucking. I wanted to get the first fucking 24, and I knew I could do fucking 24. Like I was like, I can do a fucking 24. I know it, and like that was my whole motivation going into Q3 at that time. Yeah. I was like, I don't give a fuck where I qualify, but I want a fucking 24. And like, so I was like, I got to do a 24. And so anyways, I went out and I put myself in like the perfect fucking position on track, like with the toe, because it was right behind Shaky and Leon. And we were both like 1.5 seconds from each other. So like enough leeway, enough of a gap to like, use it as a carrot. Yeah. And I knew if I could gain ground on either one of those guys, I was going to be pole, because it was either going to be one of them that was going to be pole, as it was like all weekend. Yeah. So I knew, like, if I could either gain enough ground on either one of them, I would probably get 24 and fucking
and be pole
and get pole. So I was like, fucking perfect. Anyways, I went into turn one, coming down the front straightaway, and I just fucking got like a bit of a wiggle, and like just outbroke myself just slightly. But I knew, like, going in, I was like, fuck. It was like an oh fuck moment, because I was like. Literally, like, I'm either gonna throw it in, and I fucked the lap. It's done. Like, and out of those soft like tires at the time, you only got like pretty much one lap, maybe two, but like, I knew if I folded it and pulled off, the lap was fucked, and I wasn't gonna do that great, and I didn't want to lose the toe in position that I was in, so I just said, oh fuck it, and so I went, and the second I let off and let off the brake, the front went, and that was it. The problem was the bike ended up fucking just going, massively full speed into the wall, or air fence, and then lifted the air fence, and so the air fence fully lifted, and I went just straight into the Armco metal barrier, and like. My entire career, I've always jump up. Like, I always want to move and get up as fast as I possibly can. Like, I always have, always did. And like, at the impact like that, I was almost fucking like grateful that I felt like an extreme amount of pain instantly.
Yeah. Like, not to move.
Yeah, exactly. And so but I tried to get up, and I spun around on my like hands and knees to stand up. And I got to like my hands and knees, and then like the actual real pain like started to settle in, and I was like, oh fuck. Like, oh fuck. And then by that point the pain was just like a fucking hurricane, like a fucking tidal wave just came over me in pain. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, like I'm fucked up here. Like I'm really fucked up. Like, and to the point where I was like, fuck, I'm stuck on my hands and knees, and I was stuck. I couldn't move. I couldn't even like
roll back again.
I was in so much pain. I couldn't even roll onto my side. So I was like, fuck. And then eventually the corner workers then had to come, and like, I was like, holy shit. And then, the pain kind of built. And then I went, and then
That's pain.
That's when like they realized that I shattered my both knees were like completely just blown, shattered, and then 4 vertebrae in my lower back were broken, and then it was, and then I was actually laying in, and like I by this point had my 2 daughters and the wife, and at this point this was heading to what I knew was going to be my 36th surgery.
Wow.
35th at the time, 35th operation. And I was like, fucking, I can't do this anymore. I'm fucking done. Like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I made that like pact right then and there in the gravel trap. I'm fucking done. Like, I can't do this to my body. And
I've always wanted to ask you and Shaky the same question, which is how hard it was. That amazing career that, I think we've gone for 3 hours. We've talked about that amazing career.
I've loved to have
to have the decision of
3.5, Joe.
Do I want to stop? Do I want to stop when I want to stop? Or you have the decision taken out of your hands, almost.
But in a sense, so I made the decision right there in the gravel trap that I'm done. Like, I'm fucking not going to do this anymore. I can't keep doing this to my body.
Yeah.
Got home, had the surgery, like, it was a big ordeal. I was in the hospital here in London. I was in the hospital for just like 6-7 weeks. Wow. I was in the hospital because of the extent of all my surgeries. The only movement I had was literally because of lower back and all the knees. The only movement I had for like 7 weeks was lifting myself on and off a bedpan. And like, coming from American healthcare, where you basically have like a hotel suite for a room.
Yeah.
Like, when you're recovering and post-surgery and so forth.
And you're on a ward with a load of old people with neurological
problems.
People screaming
and neurological and screaming all night.
I fell down the stairs, love. What happened to you?
Yeah. So,
and with your own back job, they put you on a ward with people with head injuries.
Exactly.
Old men.
So, and people screaming all night and like yelling and like.
Then that plays massively in your head, doesn't it?
I didn't see a window I never saw a window to the outside world for over 6 weeks, except just briefly when they would roll me to the x-ray ward sometimes.
Did you get them slow down? Let me have a look.
Exactly.
Let me have a look.
To what the outside, it was.
That's mental, isn't it?
And it was, so that was a rough. But then I had the surgeries, started physical therapy, and instantly I was like, ooh. I'm gonna go back to racing. Like, and I was like, I'm gonna race again. And my wife, I was adamant to her I wasn't, but never told her that. But I was like, fuck, I'm going to go back. Like, I will go back to racing. I'm going to.
How bad of a lifetime,
sure I can.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I can. I can go back to racing. And then literally I just did everything, physical therapy, all of it. And like the range of motion in my knees just never came back. So I had multiple surgeries, and like.
With the aim of getting back on a bike.
And that was my main, even though I wanted full range of motion in my knees, the main reason was to be able to fit on a bike so that I could race. It was why it was so extensive with it. And the doctors finally explained to me, and I thought it was more kind of like my wrist like deal, like that I could find something that worked or surgery that worked. And they were quite honest with me. They said, look, it's not the bone, it's not the joint, a fucking knee replacement won't do it. Your fucking ligaments and everything is and there's so much scar tissue. Your fucking joints are literally just a big ball of shit, basically. So there's nothing, at least right now, modern technology wise, nothing that can repair.
Did that then put you in that position of?
Then
I've had the decision taken out my hands.
Yeah, and it fucked me up for a while. I went into depression.
Yeah,
again, like I was bad. I was in a bad way, like kind of mentally.
It's a complete loss of what do I do now? Yeah,
because I had every bit of intention that I was going to race a motorcycle till I was at least 40. And that took at least like a good 5. And I still felt like I had a hell of a lot more. Yeah. I still felt, like I said, with the V4, and like I still felt like, and me giving it everything that I could have. Well, I felt like I could have won a British Superbike championship still. And so it was to that point where I was like, what the fuck am I going to do now? Like, and I went through a couple hard, like rough years, like coming to that realization, like, fuck, like, the hell am I going to do now? Like, all I've ever done is race motorcycles. Like, and I, it happened so early. I didn't have any real set like backup plan what the fuck I was going to do after. Like, so I messed around with a few things and did a few things, but then it like perfectly fell in place. Like I like 2-3 years down the way, like afterwards was when like my former trainer that I used to work with, he like put me in touch with the team owner of the American Racing in the Moto2 like championship, and they were just at the time looking for a rider coach to help with Joe Roberts, the American rider racing in Moto2 at the time. And then like, so I met with the team owner. We ended up like instantly like getting along super, super well. Like, and then started working with Joe. That went like amazingly well. Like he went from first ever, like best ever result, like prior to us ever working together, to us working together all off season of like 2019, 2020, working together, riding like super hard all winter, like together, doing motocross, everything, like training with them like 3-4 times a week. And boom, went out to Qatar and fucking put it on pole position and like all time like lap record, like, and then was fighting for the podium all race, but then got a little bit nervous at the end and ended up finishing 5th, and then podiums multiple that year, and like it was like super good. And I was like instantly like, fuck man, I love it, because I've always loved helping other riders. And even I've also looked after quite a few when I was young. Like I've also like I've paid for a lot of like young riders' careers, like, and helped a lot of young riders over the years. And so I mean, I love it.
Is it scratching that itch of like racing bikes? Yeah,
100%. Like it was crazy because Joe was like, he was quite humble and appreciative of and grateful for like the advice and everything that was like happening and at the time. And it was honest, like over these last years, helping the other riders and doing this side of it, I get far more gratification and like and sense of reward now helping the other riders than I ever did, like within succeeding in my own career.
That's incredible.
Like I really, really like, obviously I've built up this wealth of experience, knowledge in had half my career in GP, half of them on like super bikes. So, knowing the difference between the two, what it takes to make that transfer, and then like the different riding styles between the two, and being able to now like share that, and fucking, a huge list of what not to do's in careers. Like,
well, I'm not being funny, but you've got that more edge on everyone else, your story, the addictions, everything, you know what I mean? The depression, when a rider goes and speak to someone, it's like you're speaking to them for one purpose. With you, it's multiple. It's like, if I as a rider coach, if I didn't know you, I'd want to look, how do I go fast on a motorcycle? And then you have a shit run, you can't talk about that.
But people don't realize how big mental is part of it. And that's keeping your mental psyche positive, keeping your mental psyche happy, like keeping that like focus and like
all those difficult
everything, all the difficult decisions, things that happen during the race weekends, things that are happening outside in your personal life, learning how to deal with those things and transfer those things, and like and literally like majority of the time that I work with the riders, more of it is more on the mental side of it, of what's going on in their personal life, but outer life.
You've been there and got the t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's probably nobody more qualified from when you read that book and you go into, and people that haven't read it should read it to elaborate, because there's so much more in that.
That's what I'm saying. We're just scratching the itch of this, aren't we?
Massively. But then you understand you're probably the most qualified person because of the extent of the shit that you've gone through to be able to say to people. And there's another positive to come from the horrendous negatives that have gone on,
Yeah, exactly.
Class. I'll tell you what, I've got one final question from my side. What does the future hold for John Hopkins? I feel like it's going to answer like another 4-hour interview, but what's the next stage? What's the future hold?
I mean, I'm quite happy with everything that's going on with the team stuff. Obviously, we want to continue building with the stuff in the team. Eventually, in hopes of running a MotoGP team. But like we've got our management business now, which obviously Rory and Sean, both of our riders, including multiple others, are managed by us, and continue to grow that. But me personally, and then I'm opening up like a camp and like training camp in Southern California. That's going to be like it's going to be everything. It's going to be from like mini ovales, dirt track, motocross. It's going to be a well-rounded training, like the ultimate experience for even just the average rider, like that want to come over, and it's going to be fully like taken care of. So it's going to be motocross, supermoto, dirt track, and ovales.
Amazing.
That we have all the access and all the tracks and everything, all like within like a 20-30 minute drive. But everything's going to be taken care of. Like all of the, I'm going to use the home that I have there. That's going to be like the place and the base and the accommodation, and Alpine Stars are going to help. They're going to like sponsor the entire thing, and they're going to like supply all the gear, all of that stuff, so people can literally show up with a
toothbrush and crack on.
Yeah, like a carry-on, and then they're going to have everything, all the bikes, all the gear, everything, and get the ultimate kind of riding experience. And then, that's going to be more for kind of the average rider. And it's partnered with my old, like I said, my former trainer, who's then now got like some of like the biggest training facilities in Southern California for like supercross riders and so forth. So I'm partnered with him, and we're going to be using his training facility as like the classroom to go over like all the video footage and the work. And so we're going to do like different camps. Like we'll have pro camps for like the top level racers that want to come over and do the full like training part of it, using all the different bikes and opportunity in the training. And
by the way, you've sold me. I'm already. You don't have to keep going.
When is that going to start? When
so
are you going to do
the
that?
plan is this winter that we're going to be opening that, and that's something that obviously we're going to be able to kind of replicate around the world hopefully, and do something kind of like in Australia, and then some like get one over in here in Europe at some stage, possibly in Spain or something, but hopefully kind of build and replicate those. So but yeah,
and if you use the discount code Chasin the Racin, you get 10% off for this exclusive. You know what I mean? Don't worry about that.
Up.
Love it. Joe, you got any more questions, my man?
No. I think we should let you go.
I know.
I've got to go. I need to get some dinner here.
I've
been here for a few hours now.
Honestly, I'm going to speak for Joe as well. I loved every second of this. You know what I mean?
Mega. No, just thanks for your time. It's everyone's busy, aren't they? So it's
there's always one more question, and it's not for you. Did he live up to your expectations?
Absolutely.
Being the hero?
Yeah. Do you know what I was hoping for? Was just a normal, down to earth bloke, and that's what we've got. And so that's mega. Yeah,
absolutely class.
Proper.
But obviously a bit of house cleaning on this side of things. Thank you so much, Colchester, Kawasaki, Global Moto, Bennett, Alan Garner, Joe. You've made the journey down here, and most importantly, thank you so much, John, for coming on the show. It's been absolutely great having you.
It's been a great time.
Awesome.
You.
Right, take care, lads. See you in a bit.
Chasin the Racin, powered by Colchester Kawasaki, part of the Global Moto Group. We supply new Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, Vespa, Royal Enfield, Kawasaki, Sim, Mutt and Benelli motorcycles.